Bastiano from EGM. My first question is for the designer, and if you are more proud and if it was more difficult to develop a totally new multiplayer mode or a better single player experience for the single player?
I think both challenges were daunting for us. Single player, to improve it, it's our bread and butter. We kind of know single player. We have a cinematic experience, have epic set pieces, incredible boss fights, titans, and we wanted to push the envelope in this next project where we even made the visuals better by updating our renderer, adding a new lighting scheme, adding animation blending and IK. So we pushed it, and we also wanted to make sure that single player experience felt like an epic odyssey that really covered a vast variety of locations that you would go to. That in itself was a challenge, as well as creating a story that took you back to show the human side of Kratos was, I think, a challenge for us. But I think that the end result is phenomenal. I can't wait for our fans to play it. And I can't wait for people who maybe never played God of War to be able to play basically the first part of God of War now, because Ascension takes place before all the other games. Maybe they can get into the series. And multiplayer, I think Jason can best handle that.
Yeah, well, multiplayer, we tried that out right at the end of God of War 3 just to see if, playing against each other would be fun at all, So we put a couple Kratos in the arena and everybody's just swinging their blades, and we're like, oh, it's all right, So what I did, or what we did as a team, is we changed them around a little bit. We made like kind of a new Kratos with, more direct attacks instead of the wailing blades that he has in single player. And we attempted this one day, and we had the studio play it. And we found that everybody was playing it for a long time. They actually enjoyed just that simple one-on-one, we took not a lot of time to tune it, but it was already showing promise. So after that, we were like, okay, if we're gonna do it, we gotta do the God of War spin on it. We gotta make sure that the scale is epic, we got big levels, lots of brutality, and make it just as satisfying to kill each other as it is to kill enemy. And I think we found that it worked. It's like now we have lots of weaponry. We have lots of, even the blades show up in multiplayer a little bit as a kind of a power up. So it really feels like we got the heart and soul and put it in multiplayer.
And my second question is, in which direction you try to evolve the combat system? More accessible or more deep?
Well, that's the tricky thing about combat, because you always want to do both. If you make it so deep that nobody can play it except for me and like a couple other people, then only I will have enjoyment. And if you make it so simple that anybody get through, then it becomes like just boring. So what we try to do this time for the combat system is just provide more options to the player. So I know for a fact not every player is going to do every possible way to kill every enemy in every scenario, but we provided lots of options. So the first thing we added was that rage system to make sure that if you're playing well, you can actually power yourself up, and then when you power yourself up, you can choose how to use it. You can use it one big explosive attack, or you could try to maintain it, and if you maintain it, you run the risk of losing it if you get hit, or So we wanted the moment to moment to have lots of options. Like that was one. The world weapons are another. Weaponizing an enemy is another. In the demo I played earlier, when we're fighting the Cyclops, I threw a sword at him, and then that stunned him, which allowed me to ride him. So what that means is that you can actually ride a Cyclops multiple times, something that you couldn't do in God of War 3, because all you could do is just get him down to low health. So basically, the goal is always to provide that more depth, more options, more things to do, at the same time make it very easy for everybody to do, and have enough to do that everybody can find enjoyment in different ways.
Thank you.
Domenico di Spazio Games. Seeing the unique features of multiplayer, do you think there will be a chance for God of War multiplayer to become a standalone game just like Uncharted 3? Or
You want to field it?
Well, sure. I mean, I think that multiplayer for us is like a brand new endeavor, a massive undertaking. And the one thing that I want to convey to everybody that I talk to about multiplayer is that it's not something that we just tacked on. We've been busting our butts on it for 3 years. And we treated it like it was our single player experience as well, in terms of what we were trying to do with it. Every single level that you go to has a wow moment. has a big epic set piece, it has something memorable about it. Maybe it's an area that you visited before in one of the God of War games, maybe it's an area you've never been to before, but it's definitely something that you're going to remember for a long time. And I think that multiplayer kind of gives you this chance to finally create a hero or a champion that lives in the universe that Kratos exists in. Because, you know, when we're starting multiplayer, like Jason was talking about, you can't have 5 Kratoses running around with blades hitting one another, because not only is like, who am I can't tell which guy I am because I look like Kratos and so do you, but other than that, it's one of those things that you can create a guy that you kind of face off against me, or maybe we play together, and you can customize his appearance, you can customize the type of moves that you do, and you can customize the allegiance that you
And I was just going to mention, because Mark mentioned just Kratos' blades wailing around. I think that's what everybody expected when we first said that we were going to do multiplayer. They expected, well, that's not going to work because you're just going to, so as he said, we spent a great deal of effort to not do that and to actually give it its own way to fight, its own way to counter each other. And as far as if it could be a standalone game, like, I don't know. I mean, we're making a God of War game, and this was just part of it. So I don't know what we're going to see in the future.
Is it a possibility, or will you exclude it?
Well, I mean, I don't even have the power to exclude it. All I do is all I try to do is make the combat as fun as possible, and I can't speak for what it's for.
My second question is, do you think Kratos has a lot more to say about his story? And if you ever thought about a completely new character? And how this, in which way PlayStation 4 can help this franchise to grow better and stronger? And are you interested in social features, or you think this can be dangerous for the series heritage?
Wait, which one?
Only two, so
I know, but like there's the PS4, there's what's the one before?
If Kratos has a lot more to say, and if you ever thought to think a completely new character for.
I'll go back to the kind of creating your own champion thing in multiplayer. Those are new characters that we created. They're your character, and that character has a story to tell based on how you upgrade them, the allegiance you choose, the battles that you have. In single player, Kratos is our hero. He's our champion for single player. And even if you had a co-op game, for example, or something like that, and me and you were going to sit down and play co-op, guarantee we're going to both want to play Kratos. And he's basically been that way for God of War Ascension, where we find that the story that we tell for him, his backstory, the adventure we take on him, that's his experience.
And for PlayStation 4 question? No.
Yeah, we don't, basically with the PlayStation 4 is, I think we watched the same internet broadcast of the PlayStation 4. We didn't get to go to New York. And the one thing that you can say about Sony Santa Monica is that we have this laser focus on our task at hand. And with God of War Ascension, it's definitely the most ambitious project we've ever taken on at the studio. We're still working on it. That's how ambitious it is. So for us to look at anything else, we don't have time to do that sort of thing. We don't want to lose our focus on what it is, especially with the number of PlayStation 3 owners out there. There's a lot of people that would love to have a great game coming out in March, and I think that they're gonna love God of War Ascension.
But we're all excited, obviously. I mean, I think the PS4 presentation really showed what a gamer would want out of their system. And as a developer and a gamer, I'm interested, of course, but as you said, focus is Ascension right now.
Simone, per start, what was the biggest challenge in the creation of the multiplayer mode, and if you are scared about the lag for the flow of the combat system?
Well, I'll say, multiplayer was, there's so many difficulties, it's hard to narrow one. If I were to narrow one, it might be just figuring out how 8 players can fight in the same space. In single player, we do a lot of things to the AI to make them not overwhelm the player, so the player can see what's going on. In multiplayer, though, I can't control what you guys are going to do. So your guys are just going to go in there and go like, yes, let's do all our abilities all at once right now. And So the tricky part of multiplayer was figuring out how to build the levels, which you could probably get into a little bit, so that we can space the players out. It was how to do the combat, so you can actually read attacks, you can actually do one and not feel like it's that, unresponsive, but at the same time, someone can actually deflect it or counter it. And it's a different process than it takes to build single player, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, multiplayer is a crazy challenge. It's definitely our Titan for this game. Our Titan was the thing that we spent a lot of time and energy in God of War 3. We returned Titans to this game, and then we took on multiplayer. Multiplayer is just a massive endeavor. We have some really genius programmers that work on lag, and as well as combat designers, and they built their moves into how they can basically mask lag, or that you don't even experience. So
we definitely got some new methods of handling that to this game in order to be able to do this. But yeah, since we're designers, that's why my answer was more about, like you said, just more the design side of it, because we have other people worrying about a lot of other things. Like the artists are worrying about like how to make sure that this can run well and be and still look really good. Engineers are worrying about the lag and all sorts of things, as are we as well. So it's just it was a big addition for us, for sure.
I am Mauro from Rising Rome. My question is, how did you come up with the idea for a new God of War game, given the series was already quite close with the last chapter? And weren't you afraid to maybe push the game too far?
I don't think we're ever afraid of pushing things too far in Sonic Sandbox. We always want to push the envelope. But when we were starting off in this game, that starts with Todd Pappy, our director, and starts with Marianne, our story writer. And I think the story that they wanted to tell was back in the very beginning about Kratos, this man, this human. And what that did is kind of give us a framework about how we were going to build this game, where you were going to go, the creatures you were going to face against, and more to tell a story about Kratos in terms of how he breaks an oath to a god like Ares and what that means, what are the consequences of that, what are the creatures he's going to have to face, who's going to be his nemesis in this series. And I think that when we started the project, we had ideas all where we could go, what we could do, and I think that you'll play the single player experience and you'll learn that something about Kratos if you've played the game before, but if you haven't, it'll be all brand new to you to learn about Kratos for the first time.
Fabio from Eurogamer. And when we were playing the game before, we see that you put so much effort in the combat system and in the more action section. But maybe you just forgot about the complex puzzle that was like a sign of this series. Why did you choose so? Why did you choose to put did you stress the importance of combat instead of action adventures and puzzle sections?
Well, I think that there's 3 pillars for God of War. And I think the 4th pillar is now multiplayer, but the 3 pillars are combat and their navigation and then the puzzles. And I think in God of War Ascension we had a focus that we wanted to give you these kind of mind-bending puzzles that challenge you, that make you feel like you've got the tools, all the tools at your disposal to solve it, and you just need to put those pieces together in the right order or the right combination to solve it. And then when you get done with it, you feel really good about it. It's a great pace break. Otherwise, you would just have combat. So that's one of the reasons why we insert puzzles, as well as that we're able to manipulate epic set pieces, and that makes you feel like you have kind of grand control of the world that you live in and the environments. And then with navigation, we wanted to kind of update some of the things that we had already done. So if you take Kratos' climb, for example, Kratos kind of just went on flat walls before. And to update that, to make it look like the environments were actually, a rock cliff face, that meant we needed new IK, we needed animation blending, we needed to place these points differently than we had done in any one of the other games. And that was a huge endeavor for our level design team, for our tech guys, for combat, animation.
So did you think it's a little advanced? If we think, for example, at the first 2 chapter of the series, there was a much more puzzle, much more navigation, and your game, the next game, it seems to me that is combat focused.
Yeah, I think that it's about pacing, so what feels right. So what we try to do is create a pace that kind of gets your heart going and builds you up to a peak and gets you into a giant kind of like climax, maybe against a boss, or maybe it's a giant challenge that you have to complete and it's just a navigation challenge. And we pace that as well as we can throughout the game so that it never stagnates and gets stuck on one thing.
Thank you.
Giuseppe Cyberlose. The God of War franchise gained its popularity as a single-player game. Are you worried that new multiplayer of in God of War Ascension will overtake the single-player campaign like it happens in most of modern FPS?
Well, I mean, Call of Duty does pretty well. They
Yeah.
got a pretty awesome multiplayer, so no, I don't think we're worried
Since you
about
say that it's so much appealing to customize, build your own heroes in multiplayer.
But it sounds like an awesome worry, right? Like, oh, are you worried that the single player that's awesome, we all love it, right? And then we create something that's brand new that might be like to add to that.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. I hope for that. I hope that multiplayer is so awesome that I don't think that we can outdo our single player. But I hope that multiplayer is so awesome that it becomes this like fixture that every game that we do from here on out has it in it because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, we wanted to do multiplayer. We thought it was fun, and we went at it. But we knew that when we were doing it, we couldn't sacrifice a single player, and we weren't going to do that. But as he said, if multiplayer gets, is so awesome that everybody's playing it, then I'm going to be happy about that.
Even if they will completely forgot to replay the single player campaign.
Well, I mean, as long as, at least for me, like I just want someone to get enjoyment out of the game. Like another reason for the multiplayer is also that it might appeal to people that maybe the single player campaign wasn't appealing to. And if somebody is playing our game and enjoying a small part of it, then it's fine that they ignore the other part. I have no problem with that. As long as they're ignoring it not because it's terrible, but just because they just enjoy this so much, they're just going to forget about this. That's fine with me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Massimo? Dicilio from Game Soul. A more human Kratos means we will see a weaker, more sensitive, and more fearful character, or his breath and bravery will remain untouched?
I think Kratos, is never gonna back down from a challenge that's presented to him, and more human doesn't necessarily translate into more weak. It means that his combat is a little bit more, different because he's unrefined maybe in some of his actions, like our lead animator Bruno said, or it's because he's using weapons that are found in the battlefield, which kind of takes him back to his Spartan roots, like Jason was talking about. And I think it allows us to. It's important that we find out more about Kratos and who he is. He's not this one-dimensional, rage-filled guy that we found at the end of the God of War 3, right? There's a lot more to him. He's a little bit more of a complex character, and that story is why we wanted to make God of War Ascension.
And at his root, he's a Spartan. He's a warrior. So the part of his life, Mark mentioned it, is just he's just not going to back down. He's not afraid. Now that doesn't mean he's got to just I got to get to the end of this room. I'm just going to slaughter all of you guys to get there. Like he made in God of War 1 through 3, he just got progressively angrier and angrier. He didn't trust anything and would just kill everything in his path. So that's the difference that you'll see in God of War Ascension.
Christian from PS3 Zone, but I don't have any question because you already answered on the multiplayer.
Excellent. The question?
Sorry. So it's Marco for Games Collection. The question is, you said you had fun making the game. So I want to know, where did you have most fun, and what are your feelings about the main character?
Kratos. I love Kratos. I mean, Kratos represents. I mean, there's some. He's like he's got his faults, but he's got his strengths as well. And I think his strengths are that being able to play a character that is unafraid. It's like even in our demo, it always makes me laugh when I see it, where there's the giant Hecatonchires hand coming out Kratos, and what does Kratos do? He pulls out his blade, and it's like, what is he going to do against this giant, hand coming at him? But he's not afraid, and I think that's part of the fantasy of playing Kratos, that you can play a character like that. Sorry, was there another part?
What you had most fun making?
I don't know. I mean, being a combat designer, I just like seeing it all come together. In the beginning of the game, we have all these ideas, and we put them on paper, and you're trying to do it, and you gotta go through tech, and you gotta go through all these things before it can actually get in the game to see if it's even gonna work or not. And basically, what gives me the most fun is that when we're having our playtest and I see people smiling playing the game, I'm like, good, you know, we did it. You know, they were enjoying themselves right there. And now sometimes we see the other side and they definitely not enjoying themselves, but that gives us, you know, what we need to improve the game, and we'll fix it before it gets released. So definitely that. And since I'm kind of a fighter myself, the multiplayer was very fun for me.
Hi, it's Simone from Console Tribe. In the original trilogy of God of War, we see a revenge story, and Kratos is all about rage, he was angry. In the chapter for PSP, we see Kratos the man, we see the human side of the chapter. And in which way we're gonna see Kratos in Ascension?
So you're talking about Chains? He goes back to Sparta, and you see kind of where he grew up. And that's kind of that's the inspiration, right? Like, that's awesome. Like, you get to go to Sparta, you know? So in Ascension, that was kind of the part of why it was so compelling. And because there's a lot more to tell about him and who he is, and why is he cursing the gods when he's on the boat of God of War 1? Why is he having these nightmares, and why is he suffering this torment? And the other thing is that Ares is a formidable foe. The gods aren't all mad at him at this point. It's like when you kind of go back in the series, a lot of things opened up for us. Not that it was the opposite of closing down. It was more like, oh, now we can do all these things because the gods aren't all dead, and there's a little bit more to it that we can kind of return you to the mythos. That if you play God of War 1 for the first time, this will feel like that. When you play Ascension, it'll be like playing it all over for the first time.
Do you have any project for Deimos?
Well, the Deimos fight is pretty awesome. The end boss fight with Kratos, that was a lot of fun.
Talking about Ghost of Sparta.
Yeah, but it wasn't. You know, Deimos isn't the character. He's not a character in this game. Kratos is the main hero, and the antagonists are the Furies. We're solely focused on that.
Thank you.
Okay.